Okay, we should be live. Good to be here this morning. Good to be back. I hadn't been in the saddle teaching Bible class now in probably, 5 weeks or so. So it feels good to have gotten up this morning, gotten ready, looked over some material to make sure everything was still intact like it was, and appreciate everybody's concern. Doing real well. Soreness and stiffness is just slowly going away. So anyway, all that's to be expected out of it. We want to remember those who are sick. We have quite a few within the congregation that are sick. Sickness has been following some of the families around. Eric and Damien's not with us this morning. They're visiting with Mary Kate in Clanton. And for those of us that know the Moore family, Sister Ruth Moore passed away yesterday morning. So I think the funeral is going to be like Thursday at 10 o'clock, but I'll have more information between now and Wednesday night. So I want to remember that family in our prayers. Jeff, would you open us with a word of prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the study. Thank you for the many blessings of it. Thank you for being able to be here, study the portion of your word. Father, is the reasons today for him. Be with all those that are mentioned on our sick list and those that are sick. We ask that you would be with them and help them get better and be back here at the next point in time. Be with us now as we go through the study. And these we ask in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Of course, we're going to be in our study in looks like we already done hit a snag. So let me go in here and see what can happen with the electronic glitch. Let's see what we've got here. If not, we'll just have to pull out the old laptop, and I'll just do it that way. There we go. This morning we were in Deuteronomy 31 in the last class that I taught, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of use it as a refresher because there's a lot of things in here. I kind of had verse 23 marked as a stopping point, but it'll kind of be good for us to go back and pick up where we're at. We're coming in the close of Moses' leadership, and here we're going to find in this chapter, Moses is going to formally give Joshua the charge to become the leader of the children of Israel and carry them over into and conquer the promised land, as well as some other things are going to go on here. Moses is giving them a charge about keeping the commandments of God, but it seemed like here again, he spent a lot of time telling them that, after I depart and after you start the conquest, you're going to rebel and God's going to, punish you for your rebellion and things like that. So this whole deal with the book of Deuteronomy is actually a rehearsal to the younger generation that has come along. That original group, 20 years of age and above, had died out in the wilderness. So these are the children and grandchildren of those that came out of Egypt. So what Moses has been doing here is rehearsing to them and reminding them of what God had done, from the point being led out of Egypt all the way up until them going in to take the promised land, and what was going to happen in the future if they disobeyed God. So to them, this was a refresher. If you'll stop and look at the age, 20 years above and older that passed away, let's say someone was, I'm just going to throw a number out here, Jeff, was 16 years old when they left out of Egypt. 40 years later, they'd be 56. So they are, getting toward the age themselves, aren't they? So they no doubt was a group of people in all this that could remember these things as Moses rehearsed them, okay? So this is a reminder of the expectations of what God has. And where they're located at, they're still on the east side of Jordan. they're staged there. They're getting ready to go over Jordan, and one of the first cities, as we bleed on over into Joshua, that they're going to take is Jericho. And we all know the story of Jericho and how the walls fell. So we'll be getting into all of that. So, but right now in Deuteronomy chapter 31, what was the conversation look like? Moses encouraged the people and Joshua. He delivers the law to the priest to read to the people. God gives Moses a song to testify against the people, and that's real interesting. Chapter 32 is actually going to be the song that he wrote and gave to the people, and it was done to testify against them. It's kind of interesting. Why would he have a song to testify against them? Well, what that song is going to consist of is their apostasy and leaving God and the problems they're going to encounter with that. So, we know in our day and age, a lot of time long after maybe a book is written or long after an event has taken place, seems like we always have some type of song to refer back to. I think about Daddy talking about World War II, and it won't come to me. I think it's Danny Boy was a big deal back in World War II that he always referred back to. So may not necessarily have a true understanding of the event, but there are things that tell us about what happened historically within these things. So, and that's not uncommon. We know that poetry itself tells stories that people have written about events and things that we should be able to learn from. And Joshua is going to receive his charge. So this is where we're going to be. Moses charges the people, Joshua and the priest. Moses at 120, and I'll start here, Greg. Then Jeff. Then I go to you and Greg. We'll come back around. Okay. And Moses went and spake these words unto all of Israel, and he said unto them, I'm 120 years old. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord has said unto me, thou shalt not go over Jordan. So, right off the bat, Moses went and spake these words unto all Israel. And so he told him, he says, I'm 120 years old. I'm got to be an old man. And I find this statement right here, Greg, to be real interesting. I can no longer go in or out. That just shows you what comes with age. And, as we get older, I can kind of relate to that statement, Jeff, a little bit. You just can't do what you did when you was younger, even though we know Moses' natural force, his ability to be a man was not abated because he's going to make one last trip up Mount Nebo and look over. And, of course, he's going to be buried in a valley up there, but we'll get to all that later on. So, anyway, there is some thought to it. There's maybe a little deeper meaning to this, that he's talking about, I can't serve the Lord like I used to. I can't serve the Lord like I did when I was a young man. I'm not able to come in and out like I used to could. And you see this, that's why in the church it's real important that young men are groomed to take the place of the older men, isn't it? That young ladies are groomed to take the place of the older ladies, because, there comes a point in time when we just can't do like we did, We may want to, we may strive to, but we just can't do it. So Moses is, and what he's doing, he's setting them up too to let them know that Joshua, which they already know, Joshua is going to take leadership. It just hasn't been confirmed yet. And in this chapter, we're going to get confirmation of that. And he also tells them, and the Lord said unto me, thou shalt not go over this Jordan. So Moses is going to pass away on the east side of Jordan. And we know what this has to do with an event that happened at Meribah in Numbers chapter 20, when Moses was told to speak to the rock and he struck it. And so we find that that was going to be his punishment for disobeying God. And one of the analogies used there about the water gushing out of the rock has to do with Jesus being the water of life and the way he was treated at Calvary, and that's a whole nother story, so I'll just leave that laying right there. So there may be some analogy that's tied into that. So he said, I can no longer go over, I'm not going to be allowed to go over this Jordan. This severe correction was appropriate because at Meribah, as I said, Numbers 20, when Israel complained and cried for water, Moses significantly misrepresented God. He misrepresented God by lecturing the nation harshly and unnecessarily. Moses misrepresented God by acting as if God needed him to provide water for the people. And Moses both misrepresented and disobeyed God by angrily striking the rock twice instead of simply speaking to the rock as God had told him. Moses was being judged, and I think we talked about this the last time when we first started in this chapter about standards. Moses was judged by a stricter standard because of his leadership position in Israel and because he had a uniquely close relationship with God. You know, that's a very strong thought in that about leadership and being held to a standard, because of the role that you are, because of the role that you're in, it's the nature that you're in. Your knowledge should be a little bit better than what you would see on the average and things of that nature. So all organizations that I know anything about and that I've worked with, the leadership has always been held to a high standard, okay? You're in charge, you're in control, okay? And, you know, and you even see that today, maybe not as tight as it used to be, but there are those that are in leadership roles. Now, that doesn't give people a carte blanche because they're not in a leadership role to see it. We all should strive to be in a leadership role because we represent what? The church. But you find in the structural organization of things, the elders and deacons, and I just throw the preacher in there, we know he's just a servant, are held to a high standard because of what? They are the face of the organization. They are the face that people see in the organization. So that's why they're held to a high standard. So even though the people were being disobedient and all, really what happened here, Jeff, Moses lost control of himself and the situation, didn't he? And I can tell you there's consequences when you're in a leadership role if you ever lose control of a situation, okay? I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. At Meribah, the people acted worse than Moses did, okay? So if you look at it in degrees and go back there and look, the people's actions was worse than Moses. But Moses had greater responsibility. It was in Moses' leadership that he was supposed to do what? Keep what? Control. Okay? Keep control. It is right for teachers and leaders to be judged by a stricter standard, James 3:1. Though it is obviously wrong to expect perfection from leaders and teachers amongst God's people. And I think that sometimes that gets confused that, well, you're in this role, that means you're perfect. And, you know, I've worked in a couple of organizations and I've seen this happen that a lot of times somebody will get in a leadership role and they think they are the Lord and God, figuratively, of the organization, okay? But they're not. Okay, they are leaders, and even though we don't expect perfection from them, you have to use a little wisdom and judgment in the way you handle things. You know, a lot of times, Greg, this old statement, "Because I said so," don't wash, does it? And you find that with children as they get older. You know, when they're little, well, I said not to do that. Well, as they get older, that don't wash, does it? Why? You know, and I think there's a communication gap sometimes between us raising children and saying because I said so, because they need to understand why I said so, right? So anyway, I think we all get the picture of what's going on here. The encouragement to the children of Israel, verses 3 through 6. Jeff, would you read that for us, please?
the Lord your God himself will go over before you. He will destroy these nations before you, so you shall possess them, and dispose them. And Joshua will go over at your head, as the Lord has spoken. And the Lord will do to them as he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and their land, when he destroyed them. And the Lord will give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to the whole commandment that I have commanded you. Be strong, courageous, do not fear, or be in dread of them. For it is the Lord your God who goes with you, and he will not leave you or forsake you.
Okay, we find Moses, as he's addressing the people, he's already telling them, if you'll obey God, you've won the war. Now, there's going to be battles to be fought. It's the same principle in our Christian life in the church, isn't it? We already know the outcome of the war will stay faithful. But in between time, are there battles that's going to be fought? Yes, okay? So, this is a type of shadow of conquering of sin. In our life sometimes it's a daily battle to stay faithful, isn't it? The devil's going to see to that. And so we find the same principle applies today that's laid down here, physical in this. He said just like the tribal area of Og and the other king that's mentioned there, the Amorites, you defeated them. Just like they were defeated, you're going to be able to defeat those in the land of Canaan. So, already knew the outcome. And notice something here in verse 6, and kind of the theme throughout Genesis to Revelation, in verbiage here, Joshua's going to use it. Think about this, and we hear this a lot, really, in sermons and things like that. Notice what Moses charges the people at large. Be strong and of good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doeth go with thee, and he will not fail nor forsake thee. Now, when you go back and look, has that not been an overall theme throughout the Bible? Be strong, be of good courage. God will not fail thee, he will go with thee. Of course, that promise is conditional, isn't it? Moses is instructing them from the point of, if you remain faithful. And we're going to see the other side of the coin, too, as this unfolds, more so when we get into that song in the 32nd verse. And verse 5 is a promise, and the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. There ain't going to lie a problem, Jill. I'm going to give them unto you, but you got to do all that I have commanded you to do. Well, here we go. We're going to see some things that's going to go on in the history of these people that they didn't keep God's commandments, did they? And this is going to cause a problem amongst the children of Israel, and in the end, it's going to be their undoing, isn't it? Unfortunately. But he said, I wanted you to do all that God had commanded you. And, we stop and think about a lot of times how God wanted that done. You go in and conquer them, and you destroy everything. Man, woman, child, even beast, and all like that, And it seems harsh, doesn't it? And in my way of thinking, I'll just be honest with you, it seems like a harsh proposition. But what you have to remember is what God is doing here. He's creating a land for these people. He did not want that heathen influence present. Okay? In other words, it's a type of, you utterly destroy sin. Utterly, you can't go any deeper. You go right on down to the bottom, to the taproot of it, because unfortunately what happens while the younger generation is put in here is because there'll be those that will remember what happened to grandma and grandpa and mama and daddy, and what will they raise up to want to do? Take vengeance. And we see that today, don't we? And that was God's way of trying to keep these people pure. And it's a shadow to us that even the small sin has got to what? It got to go. Okay? If we're going to do God's commandments. So therein, it's going to allow a problem with these people as they go in. Moses had led Israel for 40 years. And there was no one left in Israel who had known a previous leader. Yet Israel could be confident and Moses could go his way in peace because he knew God was with Israel. Israel, Moses, or Joshua did not have to be afraid. Instead, they could be strong and of good courage, knowing that God went with them. Once more, then Moses reminded the assembly that Joshua was God's choice, and we're fixing to get to that to succeed him. A choice that appeared evident from the many years past in Exodus and Numbers, and one that was solidified by repeated verbal affirmation, Numbers 27 and Deuteronomy 1, 3, and all. But Moses is still alive. Now we fix to get into the part about Joshua, okay? And it becoming confirmed. The encouragement to Joshua, Greg, verses 7 and 8.
Then Moses called to Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land which the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall give it to them as an inheritance. The Lord is the one who goes ahead of you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed.
Greg, let's go ahead and tie verse 23 in with this, okay?
Verse 23?
Yeah.
Then it shall come about, when many evils and troubles have come upon them, that this song will testify before them as...
Hey, hang on just a second. Verse 23?
Oh, 20, I'm sorry.
Yeah, verse 20.
Then he commanded Joshua, the son of Nun, and said, Be strong and courageous, for you shall bring the sons of Israel into the land which I swore to them, and I will be with you.
Okay, so here we have, and kind of the picture you get, maybe it's like this. Here Moses and Joshua is before the people, and you kind of get the idea maybe that, a lot of times when confirmation takes place, the one that's doing the confirmation will turn to the one that's being confirmed, right? Kind of the picture you get. So everybody can see that Moses now is officially going to pass the staff unto Joshua to become the leader of the people, because he's already told them, prior to this and here now, that I'm not going to take you over into Jordan, okay? So the people were already aware of what was going on here. Now it's becoming official. So the Lord, Moses said, the Lord now is going to be with you to do this. Bringing the people into Canaan with God's work. He could certainly do it, but God almost always does his work through men and women who make themselves available to him. The man God would use in bringing Israel into Canaan was Joshua, the former assistant to Moses. Moses blessed Joshua with this encouragement. Moses knew that Joshua might be wavering, so he encouraged him and pushed him forward to fulfill the great calling God gave him. God uses encouraging people to help his people fulfill their destiny. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Moses knew that Joshua might be wavering a little bit. We're going to get into what happened after Jericho and get into Ai. And we're going to see Joshua getting a little bit discouraged with this thing of what happened at Ai. He kind of got the down and outs, kind of got the why me and all this. And one of the things God told him, Joshua, you got to quit this mess. You got to get up. You got sin in the camp. You got work to do. Now get up. And so we're going to see Joshua getting up. So, Moses is kind of alluding to the fact that, there may be some things going on in Joshua's life that he may waver a little bit along in this thing, which is not unusual for people, is it? I mean, you stop and think about all the great heroes of the Bible and those in the Hall of Fame of faith. They didn't come out the gate running like a strong racehorse wide open, did they? It was a growth process, wasn't it? but yet they were able to keep the course. Go ahead, Jim.
Moses was probably doing a little on his own wisdom. Moses was probably doing a bit of his encouragement to Joshua on his own wisdom of what he had faced.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I mean, he's telling them, you know, hey, you're gonna face some things that I faced. You know, I mean, you know, it can be a rocky road. Now, I don't tell y'all something. Just to be honest with you, manage people, supervise people along in my work life. That part I don't miss some of the people I work with, okay? I can only imagine trying to manage up to 3 million people. It's bad enough trying to manage 30 or 40. Go ahead, Greg.
And the thing that amazes me about Moses is that when they started their 40-year exile in the desert and wilderness,
Right.
he was 80
Years old then. Think about it. I mean, you know, I tell you right now, I don't want to be bothered by some things at 70 years old, and I'm not. Unfortunately, Jeff, your nerve just can't take it. I can't do like I did when I was 60, Greg. Okay? But yeah, he was 80 years old. Just think about it, you know? And you have to think about what all he had went through prior to those 80 years, you know? Now he has this. You know, Paul kind of echoed that about when he talked to the church at Corinth and said, you know, I've been in shipwreck, I've been in perils, I've been caned 3 times, I've been in perils of the brethren, I've been in perils of the sea, I've been in perils of my own countrymen, and on top of this comes the daily care of the churches. Can you kind of see Paul echoing some of the same sentiment of like, you know, this is a lot. Go ahead.
Joshua was pretty close to 80.
Yeah,
He took over the nation.
yeah, when he took this over, yeah.
He wasn't far from it.
Yeah, he wasn't far from it. I did know exactly, but I don't remember. But it's a very good point. Yeah, he was an older guy. You know, let's just say he was 22. You know, Joshua and Caleb, they were part of the spies, and they were the only 2 out of that original group above 20 years of age. Okay, don't know exactly how old they were, but let's just throw a number out there for the sake of it. Let's just say Joshua and Caleb were 30 years old. 40 years later, how much that make them? 70? So you're right on target, Jeff. I mean, yeah. They wasn't exactly, he's not exactly a young whippersnapper himself, is he? So, yeah. So it's something to stop and think about. So does that mean people serving God will not stumble? No. You're going to stumble. The devil going to see through it. He's going to see there's a pothole you're going to step in. You're going to twist your ankle. Maybe even break a leg. But that doesn't mean you still can't be faithful. It's not that things happen to you. It's how you recover and accept those things and how they temper you. You know? And still, at best, what did Peter say? Peter said, if the righteous scarcely make it. That means, Jeff, if the righteous get in by the skin of their teeth. You know? So it's a proposition, and there's a lot in here that we haven't talked about the lives of people. So did God start out using perfect people? He began to use people whose heart he knew was willing. Were they perfect? No, but were they willing? You know? That's why David was, out of all the heartache David had, David, you know, some of it was the nature of the beast. He was king, right? Nature of the beast. A whole lot of it, though, he brought on himself, didn't he? Okay? But what would David always do? He would always be willing to recognize that he had sinned and go back to God for help. There's a difference. That's why the Bible uses a term in Hebrews chapter 10, willful. And that's a very powerful word. That's something you don't want to ever get entangled into something willful, okay? Willful means you done it anyway. You knew, you understood, you had the facts, but you did it anyway. There's a difference between a man striving and failing and a man willfully failing. there's a big gulf between those two statements. So anyway, this is what we're looking at. Didn't get as far as I thought I would. The encouragement to the priest, verses 9 through 13. So now he's going to encourage the priest. And Moses wrote this law, delivered it unto the priests of the sons of Levi, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and unto the elders. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the feast of the tabernacle, when Israel is come to appear before the Lord, they, in this place which he shall choose, they shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Where am I going? Okay. Gather the people together, men, women, and children, thy stranger that is within thy gates, that they may learn and hear, that they may fear the Lord, and that your children which have not known anything may hear, learn to fear the Lord as long as you live in the land, whether you go over to possess it. So now he's looking at the priesthood, isn't he? And what's he telling them? You're going to take these things that I have written, okay? And when we look at this maybe a little bit farther into it, looks like he's talking about after the Genesis through Deuteronomy, which is called the Pentateuch that Moses wrote, about those things that's in there. There is some thought that he's really focusing more on Deuteronomy, which is kind of an overview of all the other, but either way, they're to read God's law every 7 years during the Feast of the Tabernacle and the release of the servants. There's going to be a problem with that. We only find several times of where that was ever done. Was it done more? We don't know. All we know is it's recorded where they done that on several occasions, and it was hundreds of years apart, okay, when they done it. So there is going to be problematic with that they did not fulfill, it looks like, this commandment of God about the 7 years. And also the 7 years, what was the land supposed to do? Rest. So there was a whole lot involved in this that Daniel alludes to about the 490 years, and I covered that, and I shouldn't even went there with that. So part of the job of the Levites was to minister to the word of God to Israel, as the Levites would settle in cities and villages appointed throughout all Israel. In addition, every 7 years, the Levites would have a public reading, an explanation of the law of God, as was modeled in Nehemiah 8, verses 1 through 8. And that's one of the times you find it recorded. The law, either all the books of Moses or just focusing on Deuteronomy, was to be read every 7 years at the Feast of Tabernacles. Here we go. The first we know of public reading of the law is in Joshua chapter 8, and we're going to get to that in Joshua. The next we hear of it's during the reign of Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 17, more than 500 years later. Then in the reign of Josiah, there's another public reading of the law in 2 Chronicles, more than 250 years after Jehoshaphat. So the indication that we're getting is some of these commandments that God told them to follow, they were spotty at doing, okay, from what we can tell. So therein lies the dilemma that they're not fulfilling all the commandments of God. And I see Morgan and Titus has come in, so it's time for me to hush. So we'll get ready for the worship service. Okay.